Hello, all you freaks out there. This is Ryan.
And this is Rhonda.
And I want to come on here and wish you guys a very happy National Water Park Day.
It was a good day for a water park.
It was a good day for a water park. It's also National Milk Chocolate Day. And it was not a good day for milk chocolate because it would be melted chocolate. But
well,
you know, we do love to celebrate our holidays here on the
it's important.
Awesome Paranormal Show.
Every
yes,
day is important.
It's important to acknowledge these holidays that people hold so dear to their hearts, like National Water Park Day.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's been should be National Water Park Summer, especially around here, where it's been
true.
Super humid.
I don't even know that water parks help it with some of the heat that we had.
Man, it's like walking through soup sometimes when you walk outside.
Yeah.
Here in Richmond. I don't know. We have Scott Wolter and CJ in the queue there. I don't know how it is up in Minnesota, but I'm sure they get maybe a month of good weather and then it's turns cold again. But actually, no, I heard they have really bad mosquitoes up there.
Really?
Because of all the lakes. So they're nodding their head there. Yeah, it's just been a really rough summer. But
yeah, it's been extremely hot. And to your point, then it's been all this rain. So now the mosquitoes are
the size of hummingbirds flying around us.
Yeah.
Like Jurassic Park.
Yes, Kings Dominion does have a water park.
Yeah, there you go. National Water Park Day.
I did not go to the water park. I should have.
After the conversation we had on the show about water parks a few weeks ago, I understand why you don't want to go into a water park. Look in our archives for that show. We won't go into that tonight.
No,
but
it's just best to plead ignorance.
Yes. Yeah, just listen to the show. It was interesting to say the least. So tonight is a very special episode.
Yes, it is.
We have CJ Momo Marie from Spirited Investigators joining us tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her onto the stage here.
We haven't seen your pretty face in a while.
Hi. Oh, you're so sweet. Rhonda, you're the best. You too.
I definitely appreciate you being here. I definitely appreciate you helping us out with this very special guest. We've got Scott F. Wolter. He is a forensic geologist. He was the host of America Unearthed on the History Channel. You can now find it on Amazon Prime. I was watching it earlier this week. Scott has written many books, including The Hooked X, Oak Island, Knights Templar, and the Holy Grail, Secrets of the Underground Projects Revealed. And we're very honored to have Mr. Scott Wolter on the show with us. Welcome.
Hi, guys. I'm sorry I'm stuck in a bedroom here, but I was outside and I'm staying at a friend's house right now, but the neighbor has a brand new pit bull puppy and it's barking constantly. And then the air conditioner went on outside and I said, all right, I'm bringing it in. So here I am.
Hey, it's all good. I'm sitting at my dining room table over here. So where it's all good. How have you been?
I've been good. I've been traveling like a madman. And CJ can tell you a couple of weeks ago, we did the Moose Lake Agate Day show and it was fantastic. It's always a good show. And now I'm doing some traveling. I'm currently in Texas, but I'll be in Arizona, California, and then I'm not sure where before I eventually get back to Minnesota. But we're doing research. I'm writing sometimes as I drive if we switch off. And I was just writing before I came here, and I had a creative streak. So the next book is coming out. It'll probably come out next spring. Yeah, probably next spring, but it will actually dovetail or connect with, that is our state bird, the mosquito. Actually, our state bird is the loon, but it's rapidly being overtaken by these giant mosquitoes. So stay tuned. There'll probably be a switch here before too long. But
we always joked about that, didn't we? Always said mosquitoes are state bird.
Yep. That's been a long running thing, and it has merit. There's a reason for that.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so I've been busy, and I had a really interesting interview earlier today where I spoke to a Hebrew scholar and a what did he call himself? A Mormon journalist. He's not an advocate for the Mormon faith, but the two together wanted to talk to me about the Bat Creek Stone. Have you ever heard of the Bat Creek Stone?
No.
I have not heard of that.
Tell us about that.
CJ, have you heard about the Bat Creek Stone?
Well, of course. I watched your episode about it.
Okay, so you know what it is. Basically, in 1889, a Smithsonian Institution field agent by the name of John Emmert was excavating a mound number 3 in a complex of 3 mounds that were along the shores of the Little Tennessee River in Tennessee. And under the skull of one of 9 bodies that were found in this particular mound, or skeletons that were found in this mound, the only one with its head to the south, they found a sacred bundle. And inside that sacred bundle, under the skull, were some interesting artifacts that included a red ochre stone for face paint, a bone awl for making holes and leather for stitching clothing together. There was some other wood, 2 what they thought were copper bracelets, and then an inscribed stone that they thought was Paleo-Cherokee text. The Smithsonian Institution published this information about that dig in 1894, and that was it. But it turned out in the 1960s, a Chicago patent attorney, a woman by the name of Henrietta Mertz, who was also a scholar and researcher, went to the Smithsonian Institution, grabbed the Bat Creek box, and she flipped the stone over. And she thought she recognized Phoenician characters. The stone was eventually turned over to a Semitic scholar, one of the top Semitic scholars of the day, a guy by the name of Cyrus Gordon, who came out and said, this is not a Paleo-Cherokee inscription. It was Paleo-Hebrew. So, of course, that, caused a ruckus with the Smithsonian. There was nobody here before Chris, certainly not Jews in America before Columbus. And anyway, this led to, it was a big controversy, of course. And one of the guests on our show, Hugh McCullough, Professor Dr. Hugh McCullough, who was actually a professor of economics at Ohio State University, initiated a testing program on these artifacts. And one of the first things they did was they tested some of the wood. And the C14 test results came back. Now, remember, this was in 1987, so the C14 technology has gotten a lot better since then. But the dates that he got at that time were between about 39 and 760 AD. Wow. So we're talking as old as almost 2,000 years ago, and at the very least, almost 1,300 years old. So, and of course, if they would have asked the Cherokee, they would have told the Smithsonian, we don't have a written language, so it couldn't possibly be Paleo-Cherokee. So in any case, they also tested those 2 bracelets. And it turns out they were not copper, they were brass. And they were made of a composition of copper and zinc and lead that had the exact same percentages as first century Jewish bronze work in the Middle East, or brass works in the Middle East. So we got a real problem here, folks. We've got somebody who knew how to write Paleo-Hebrew back at least 1,300 years ago, possibly going back as 2,000 years ago in North America. So what's that all about? Well, that actually has dovetailed with some other research that I've done. But first and foremost, I'm a forensic geologist. The work I did on the stone, I published. It was peer reviewed. Of course, the academic scholars have a big problem with this, and since they're not able to attack the work that I did, they label me as a pseudoscientist and other wonderful names to try to undermine, the work that I've done and the narrative that they don't want to come out, which to me is kind of stupid, because the data is the data, the results are the results, the history is the history. So what the hell are we worried about? Let's just let it fly, see where the facts take us, and have fun while we're doing it. What the hell?
Yeah, why do you think people are so afraid of the truth like that?
Well, there are a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is what I call problems of the human condition. Many of these academics are very territorial about their research, and they don't want to be proven wrong. They don't want to look stupid, and they hold on to these paradigms because this is what they were taught. And we're talking about people that are in humanities disciplines. And don't get me wrong, these are wonderful disciplines, but they are not formally trained in the scientific method. I work in a hard science discipline. I run a laboratory, for God's sakes. I do material forensics. I do scientific method all day, every day now for about 40 years. So I kind of understand the process, and I find it humorous and frankly sad when these people attack me personally and say things like I don't understand scientific method. I'm just like, what?
Oh my gosh, it's so like ingrained in school.
Well, that's the problem of the human condition aspect of this. And, if you truly understand scientific method, and let's say, CJ, you wrote a paper based on a research study you did that says that wine is good for you, right? And that's the prevailing thesis that's out there. And then a few years later, somebody else, Rhonda, you do another study. You come up with new data that CJ didn't have, that says, no, wine is not good for you. Okay. Now, CJ could, blow a nut and get all excited and defensive and, criticize you for the work you've done, but you did good work, right? And CJ, being a good scientist and understands scientific method, doesn't get offended because her thesis has been overturned. She realizes, hey, this is new data that I didn't have available to me. Good for you, Rhonda. And being the good scientist, not only do you accept it, you embrace it and you move on. And it doesn't mean that CJ was stupid. It means she's smart, because she does truly understand the scientific method. But this is not what I've seen in this arena when I deal with, and I don't want to pigeonhole all of these academics like archaeologists and anthropologists and historians that I've dealt with, because I've dealt with some really good ones that are open-minded, that are willing to take a look at this new information. And some of them have said, hey, we need to take a brand new look at this whole topic. So they're not all like that, but sadly, there is a pretty big group of them that are like that. Now, that's one reason that we run into problems. The other reason is more difficult. And, without, I hate to sound like I'm being conspiratorial, but the truth of the matter is there are larger forces at work here that want us to believe a certain historical narrative about our country. Now, I don't want to get into the political aspects, especially what's happening today, because it's so toxic. You can't even have a civil discussion with somebody on the other side politically, because everybody is just so charged right now. And it's sad because, I don't learn anything when I talk to people that agree with me about everything. We're all on the same page, and, we're happy for you, and that's great. I learn from people that have a different opinion, and I find it healthy, frankly, to sit down and talk about politics, to talk about science, about controversial artifacts like these with people that have a different take, and have a civil discussion and agree to disagree sometimes if we're not going to find common ground. And then when we're done, let's be friends and go have a beer and everything's great, right?
Yeah.
We can't do that anymore today, which is sad, or we can't do it enough. I'm hoping that we'll get back to that. But when I talk about larger forces at work, Let me ask you guys a question. Who do you think stands to be negatively impacted if these out-of-place artifacts that have been found in North America suddenly get accepted and present a different story than the one that we were fed, frankly? And I'll give you an example. The Kensington Runestone was carved by the Knights Templar as a land claim. Just a few decades after they were put down in 1307, they bonded with the Native Americans, the indigenous people of this continent, through ritual and intermarriage. And they had access to North America, Central America, South America. They were all over the place. And they are responsible for many of these out-of-place artifacts. But who would stand to suffer? Who does not want to see, especially this truth about the Knights Templar history, come out? Just tell me who you think would be adamantly opposed to any of this.
I mean,
I can think of 3 right off the top of my head.
Fire.
Government, church, Opus Dei.
Well, the biggest one is the Roman Catholic Church. And the reason is, and I'll just come out and say it, I don't care. I have the evidence to support it, and there's DNA to support it. But have you guys ever heard of the Telpiat tomb?
No.
I know you have. Okay, are you guys on your computers?
Yeah.
I am.
Google this right now. Talpiot tomb.
Telpiat, Jerusalem.
Wow.
Wow, right? Now just to cut to the chase, there are 7 ossuaries. There were a total of 10 ossuaries found in this tomb back in 1980 during my lifetime. I remember when all this happened. And 7 of those ossuaries have names inscribed on them, 6 in Aramaic, 1 in Greek. Names like Jesus or Yeshua, which is, his name was not Jesus, it was Yeshua, son of Joseph. Another was James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. Another ossuary said Joseph, Matthew, Judah, son of Jesus. I think another one was Maria. And then the 7th one, and the only one that was inscribed in Greek, said Mary Emne the Mara. Mary Emne is a pet name for only Mary Magdalene, found in the Acts of Philip. And the Mara is a title of honor, as in Lord, Master, or Queen. Now, why the hell has the world not heard about this? How come you guys don't know about this? There's a reason. Because it's extremely heretical to the Roman Catholic Church. And the problem with artifacts like the Bat Creek Stone and the Kensington Runestone and a whole host of others that are all fake, right, is that they trigger a series of dominoes to fall, and they end up going to inconvenient places like the burial tomb, the ancestral family tomb of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and their family. And yes, they were married, and yes, they had children. And before people get all upset about that, let me tell you some facts, okay? If you understand anything about the first century Essenic tradition that Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and John the Baptist, for that matter, were a part of, you would understand that to be a rabbi at that time, you were required to be married, and you were required to have a son for succession. This is not news to people that understand this, okay? And I'll tell you something else that's going to rock the boat a little bit, but I don't care because it's the truth. Mary Magdalene was married to John the Baptist and had a son named Jesus before she married Jesus. When John the Baptist was beheaded, because the priestly line went through the feminine, through the female, a family member was obligated to marry her, and that family member ended up being Jesus. And they had a son named Judah, who, funny, his name is in the Telpiat tomb. So this whole notion of a sacred bloodline that goes back to the Da Vinci Code, that was such a famous and popular movie, and heretical at the time, is in fact exactly what happened. It is the truth, but certain Christians just don't want to accept that, and I can appreciate that. I want to make sure that I make a distinction here between talking about science, facts, and real life versus talking about faith. They're two different discussions. My point isn't to come here on your show and try to offend people. That's not what I'm here to talk about. But I don't have time to talk about people's beliefs, because whatever your belief is your belief. You have every right to believe whatever you want. And frankly, I don't care, and you probably don't care what I think when it comes to faith. But when we're talking about real history, when we're talking about facts, these are the facts. And if you read about the Telpiat tomb, there's a lot more that interconnects with all of these artifacts, including the Back Creek stone that we just talked about. Okay, I'm going to take a breath.
I'll throw in one little thing about the tomb, is that there's something very interesting that was on the floor in that tomb, wasn't there, Scott?
There was. There were 3 skulls that were found. Actually, what happened is when the archaeologists went into the tomb, it turns out that at some point in the historical past, about 900 years ago, what happened in Jerusalem 900 years ago? Oh, yeah, the First Crusade. And who was there in Jerusalem during the time of the First Crusade? The Knights Templar, right? Must be a coincidence, I'm sure. In any case, somebody entered that tomb, but they didn't properly reseal it. And what happened over the centuries is Terra Rosa soil from the rose gardens above the tomb flowed into the tomb and coated all of the ossuaries, all of the inside of the tomb, and it piled up about 2 feet in depth. When the archaeologists dug all that out, discovered the ossuaries, on the floor of the tomb, they discovered 3 skulls that had been placed in the south, west, and east quadrants.
Cardinal directions.
And that's not a coincidence either. That just happens to be where the 3 highest officers sit in a Masonic lodge and in a Templar commandery. And those 3 skulls were probably 3 Templar knights who died during the siege of Jerusalem back in the early part of the 12th century, and that would have been honored to have their skulls placed inside the tomb of their ancestral king as symbolic guardians. So that's what CJ was talking about.
And one of them was the 4th Grand Master of the Knights Templar, a little ancestor of mine named Bernard de Tremblay.
Well,
he was beheaded during battle over there in Ascalon.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with the Telpiat tomb is that the Israeli authorities, antiquity authorities, collected what was left out of the ossuaries because the bones had already been taken away. But that's another story by the tradition. And but the skulls that they found and the remaining bones inside the ossuaries were all interred in a mass grave in Israel. So we can't do any work on those skulls, sadly. And what work has been done on the bone fragments and the organic material that was preserved inside the ossuaries. There has been some DNA work that's not published. I am familiar with it. I can't really go into details, but I can tell you that everything I've told you, that those DNA results do nothing to but support what I just told you. There's a bombshell I've never talked about before.
Exclusive.
And I wish that we could DNA test that, because it would be nice to know what happened to Grandpa Bernard's head.
Yeah. Well, he's in a mass grave with all the rest of them right now.
More than likely.
What do you think of that?
Man, I'm kind of blown away.
So are you seeing, because are you seeing a shift though where people are more apt to, or the general public are more apt to believe that what the Catholic Church told us as far as rules and regulations and the things that happen, and even government, they're not so quick to believe it anymore?
Well, there's no question that, you know, that people attending church, whether they're Christian or Muslim or Buddhist or Jewish, is declining. Certainly, the Roman Catholic Church attendance is dramatically dropping, especially in the United States. You see churches closing all the time. And I think this is a natural progression as society becomes more educated, as we come in, you know, we're well into the 21st century now. We have these curious things called cell phones, which I have right here, that, you know, I find it really interesting that a lot of people that have strong religious beliefs, you know, they talk about being pious and humble and all these things, and they are reticent to accept certain scientific facts that, like what I just told you, they don't want to believe that because it conflicts with their faith. And again, I don't want to try to mix the two, because you really can't. You have to either talk about one or the other. Otherwise, it just gets problematic. But on the other hand, some of these people that talk about the world being 6,000 years old, according to Scripture, are more than happy to accept life with a cell phone and their computers and their cars and, you know, the internet and all this stuff. And so I find that to be a little bit hypocritical. And I do think that especially young people are. I remember when, you know, I was young, you know, the elders around me would say, well, geez, you know, this younger generation is so stupid, and, you know, they're distracted by all this stuff. And, you know, back in my day, and, you know, I can tell you that in my view, when I look at young people like CJ and others, the younger generations coming up now are a hell of a lot smarter, more savvy. And I think the future looks bright. Frankly, I think they're wonderful people, but you know, they make mistakes like all young people do. I don't care what generation you're talking about, but frankly, I think the future does look bright, and I think that there are things that need to happen. I think education is a cornerstone to a healthy society, and I think that we need more of that in certain circles of our country, of our world. And in many ways, I think organized religion will stifle that. And that's just how I feel about it. And I think, you know, the data would support that. But again, there's nothing wrong with people having faith. Every person that's born onto this earth, I can't think of any examples to the contrary right now, but I think at some point in all of our lives, we'll sit back and we'll start asking those big questions in life, right? Like, you know, is there a God? What happens after I die? Do I have a soul? Does it continue on? And all these big questions, right? And I think what you're seeing is people will pursue those answers in many different ways. And organized religion is one way that they can do it, and that's fine. If that's the way you want to do it, that's great. I pursue that spiritually through Freemasonry, through Templarism, and other esoteric traditions. That seems to work for me. It works for a lot of my brothers and my sisters, like CJ. And some people will do it other ways. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to you, right? And those two words that really say it all: know thyself. And whatever journey you choose to take to pursue the answers to those questions, that's your choice. And there's nobody that should criticize you for however you choose to do it, nor should you criticize anybody else for how they choose to pursue it. And that sort of brings up something right now that's a hot button issue in our country right now, especially right now, is there's talk about making, you know, the United States a Christian nation. And I can tell you, as a Freemason, and this is true, you guys know what I'm talking about, and this is a serious thing, but as a Freemason, I can tell you that 53 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Master Masons. They were also Knights Templar. They just didn't tell anyone. And they would be appalled at the whole concept of of our nation having any religion be our state religion. They would be absolutely just beside themselves because they are an outgrowth, and our Constitution is a direct outgrowth of the experience of the Knights Templar, who were persecuted by the monarchs of Europe and the Roman Catholic Church, who combined with each other to elevate themselves above the people and suppress them. And the whole notion of our new republic, our free Templar state, our new Jerusalem, Brother Francis Bacon called it the new Atlantis, which we now call the United States of America, is to have the people elevated above our government. And and there are some issues that definitely need to be addressed, but a national religion is absolutely not the way to go. Most people in this country are Christians. That's great. Knock yourself out and you can do whatever you want. But you are not in the position to say anything about what somebody else wants to do, what somebody else wants to believe, whether they're Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, whatever, or nothing. So I think that's an important point to take away from this discussion. I don't know how I got here, but here we are.
It's definitely a slippery slope to call a Christian nation or a Muslim nation. We have freedom of religion for a reason. So you can believe what you want to believe.
Or not believe, or not believe anything. That's your choice. That's your business, and it's nobody else's business. But if you're a Christian, or if you're a Muslim or a Buddhist, and you have friends that you can identify with and find common ground, then good for you. And what I think is healthy is when Christians sit down with Muslims or sit down with Jewish people and they learn about each other. And you know what they're going to find? Is
they're
that there's
similar.
A lot of similar things. Exactly.
They're similar.
I know. And you know what? I use this analogy. I travel around the world a lot, and I love it because you're going into different cultures, you're learning different traditions, and cultural aspects, and it's so interesting. I tell people, look, I know what my buddies that I graduated from high school think. I know what they do. I know what they think. I don't learn anything. I don't learn as much, I should say, as I do when I meet people that have other traditions that are completely foreign to me. And sometimes I learn about things that are similar to what we do, but they actually do it a little bit better. Imagine that.
True. And it really is. I mean, that was when you were talking, I was like, the thing is, when you look at any religion, it's all about believing in something higher than you and being good people, being good human beings.
Yeah.
And it all kind of corresponds together. Even sometimes when you run across somebody who says, I don't believe in anything. And they're like, well, do you wish on things? Do you wish you had a car? Do you wish you had this? They're like, well, yeah. Well, what are you wishing to?
Teresa said if we were all the same, it would be boring. I couldn't agree more.
True.
Very well stated.
Hey, I think a lot of people. I think a lot of people are scared to talk with other people because they may realize that maybe what they believe may be a little off. So I mean,
or not as interesting or whatever. Yeah. I got to tell you a funny story. So this was about 5 years ago. My son Grant, his best friend Joey, who I've known his whole life. I coached him growing up, and he's a wonderful guy. And he was getting married, and he asked me if I would perform the ceremony. And I said, Joey, I said, I'm not clergy. I said, I'm not even religious. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, no, you can do it. He said, and so we talked about it, and I said, okay, I think what I'm going to do is join the Universal Church, and I can get my certificate and I can perform this ceremony legally, right? So I went through the thing, I did the clicks, and I answered the questions, and I got all our blood is red, right on, sister. So I got my certificate, and then I sat down with Joey and Marissa, and I said, okay, guys, what are we going to do? Now, I knew that Joey was Jewish, and I knew that Marissa was Christian. And so I said, well, what do you guys want to do here? Are we doing one or the other? And she said, Can we incorporate both into the ceremony? I said, yeah, that's fine. And so then I thought about it, and I said, you know what? I said, I also have another idea. Would you guys be interested if I introduced an indigenous Native American marriage ritual into the ceremony? And they said, well, what is it? And I said, well, here's what it is. Now, we broke a cup, a glass, covered with a cloth for the Jewish tradition for Joey's side, and then we lit a unity candle on the Christian side for Marissa, and then we did this Native American ritual. And anyway, have you ever heard of something called a marriage pot or a marriage vessel?
Yes. It has the two spouts on either end.
It's got the two spouts. Yes. It's got the handle that unites the two, right?
Yep.
And so, so what you do is, and I explained it to them, and then we did it, right? So they pour the wine, and we did little plastic cups in each of the two spouts. And so the bride invites, her groom to take a sip out of, the cup on one side. And so he takes a sip, and then she takes a sip. And then they turn it around, and then he offers it to her, and then she takes a sip, and then he takes a sip. And then what you do is you fill up both sides, and then they go cheek to cheek, and they drink it together at the same time. Now, if they spill, that's not good. You usually spill a little bit, and everybody laughs, and it's fun. But they were able to pull it off. And of course, the handle unites the two. And I went through the whole thing, and it was really beautiful to incorporate not just, the Jewish aspect and the Christian aspect, but the Native American aspect, right? Which was beautiful. And I remember after the ceremony, I was a little bit nervous. I went up to Joey and I said, Joey, I said, your dad, he's just, hardcore, Hebrew. And I said, is he going to be offended by this? And he came up to me and said, Scott, that was awesome. I just loved it, and it just worked out great. So we incorporated 3 different traditions, and it was fabulous.
Now, why do you think traditions are so important to us?
Well, there's many reasons. I think at the end of the day, it bonds people as family. It bonds people as a community, as a cultural identity. I think there's very important things, regardless of what your history is, of what your cultural ethnicity is. I think those differences between us are what bind us together when you're part of that tradition. But at the same time, you don't want it to be something that when other people that are not part of that are excluded or ostracized or, heaven forbid, looked down upon because they don't embrace the same belief systems, the same traditions that you might, and the people that you associate with. And, this again goes into this whole area of if you're not part of that tradition, be curious, ask questions, and hopefully people that are part of a community will welcome you and appreciate the fact that you want to learn about their culture, about what they believe in, or what this tradition is all about, because everybody wins when you do that, I think. And so I think that's an important thing. I think within the culture, it helps bind those people together. There's a closeness that goes along with that, but it also is an opportunity to share that with other people and make new friends and create new traditions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Teresa was asking if you could explain exactly what a Freemason is.
Okay, great question. And this, I don't get this question often enough because, and I'm just going to be frank. You guys will find that I'm not afraid to speak my mind. I'm not afraid.
Nope, not at all.
To talk about that impression. That's how you really feel about it.
Exactly. Well, you're going to hear, brother. You ask me, you're going to get it. And the first thing I'm going to say is the Roman Catholic Church absolutely condemns Freemasonry, and I'm going to tell you why. It's very simple. And it goes really to the core of this whole subject matter that we've been talking about. So Freemasons, basically, we are a society of primarily men that are trying to make good men better men already, and we use the allegory of something, the analogy, it's of what we call a rough ashlar. It's a piece of stone that's rough. It's basically cubic in shape. It's just been, taken out of the quarry, and we have it, and it's ready to be worked on. Okay. But it's what we call a rough ashlar. That is a person that is a brother who is not a Freemason yet. He's basically a good person. He tries to do the right thing, but he can use a little coaching, a little teaching. And so through our Masonic teachings, we try to educate. We try to educate them spiritually, physically, emotionally, and intellectually. And so we have the second piece of stone, which is a stone that's about the same size, but it has been trimmed off. It's been polished, and it's a beautiful cubic square, right? That is that's ready to go into the building to perform its structural duty in holding up that building. One of many thousands of stones that hold that entire structure together. But the analogy is that person who started off as the rough ashlar that becomes a better person, not a perfect person, but a much better person in all aspects of their lives, that then goes into society to help make that a better society. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Okay. So when you become a Mason, you go through what we call the Blue Lodge, and the color blue is very important and symbolic. One of the symbols it represents is water, is amniotic fluid, if you will. And this person that started off as the rough ashlar, once you become a Freemason, the old person that you were is dead. Okay, I mean, this is allegorically, right? Symbolically. And because of all of these teachings, your initiation into these rites, this knowledge, you are then reborn, right? As this new person that has a deeper understanding of many different aspects of life, and is a better person. We want to believe. So, but when when you become a Freemason, you have to take an obligation on the altar, and on the altar are a number of holy books. There is a Bible, there is a Torah, there's a Quran, there's a Buddhist Bible.
Okay.
In my particular lodge, I introduced an eagle feather, which our native brothers will take their obligation on an eagle feather, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you call deity, God, Yahweh, the Great Spirit. We're all talking about the same thing.
Yep.
So that is the issue with the Roman Church, because they have a particular dogma that you must follow. And if you don't, then you are not a Christian. And, it's severe. And it's frankly, it's not right, because that's not the only way to achieve salvation, as it were, or spiritual enlightenment, because at the end of the day, that's what salvation is. It's understanding yourself, know thyself. And so that's the reason why they don't like us, why they condemn us, because it's not about the institution controlling you and telling you what to think, what to believe, and what to do, which is what organized religion does. I mean, let's just call it what it is. And in Freemasonry, it's up to you, and it's your journey. And you can take it as far or as little as you want. Once you go through the first 3 degrees, you are a Master Mason, you are on board, you're a full-fledged brother, and it's all good. But if you want to pursue what we call additional light, additional knowledge in Freemasonry, you can go the Scottish Rite, which builds off of the Blue Lodge. So the first degree is the 4th degree. And there's a total of 29 additional degrees plus 3 is 32. The 33rd is honorary. That's bestowed by the Supreme Council. And if you even talk about it, you won't get it. So we're not going to talk about it. But I am a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Freemason. There is another branch called the York Rite, which has 10 additional degrees that also build on the Blue Lodge. So again, the first degree is the 4th, for a total of then 10 additional degrees for a total of 13. Now, Teresa Chalmers just asked a really good question. And frankly, it was one of the issues that I had when I became a Freemason, is that it is a male fraternity. Now, in Freemasonry, we also have organizations that do, that are set up for women, like Eastern Star. And CJ can talk about those.
Sure.
Yeah. And so we do have other organizations that welcome women, Daughters of the Nile, Eastern Star, Job's Daughters, and then we have for the young men the Demolay. But it's not the same as Freemasonry. So that said, there are traditions out there that I am a part of that welcome women. And frankly, there's nothing that we do in Freemasonry that the ladies can't handle. One of the arguments I heard from a brother that at first I rolled my eyes and then I thought about it honestly. And I said, yeah, women are a distraction at times, but it's true. Don't laugh, CJ. It's true.
Well, I get that. I'm laughing because I get that too. But at the same time,
like I said, there are traditions out there that welcome women on an equal plane. And frankly, there are times when I think the feminine perspective would help a discussion, would help us as brothers be furthered along in our understanding about the feminine aspect. And so that's a great question that she asked.
I can see that too, because if you from what you're saying, you're accepting of everything. I think sometimes women can be a little more accepting when you can get caught in like rules and regulations and like, no. A woman can be like, well, let's look at this from the lighter perspective.
Yeah.
I have a good question. I have a question, I think.
Well, I'll tell you if it's good or not.
Do you have to be invited to be a Freemason?
That is incorrect.
To be a Freemason.
No, that is an absolute misconception. That is one of the things that the Roman Church puts out there, and it's not true at all. If you're interested in becoming a Freemason, the phrase we use is all you need to do is knock on the door and ask a brother Mason, or you can go online and look up the Grand Lodge in your particular state, become a Freemason. Click on it, you fill out a petition, and they'll take it from there. So absolutely not.
It's
you don't
free
have
will, whatever you want to do with your life.
Pardon me?
Like it's free will, whatever you want to do for yourself.
Exactly. And although it's not to say that there haven't been some people that have been invited by brothers, I've met some really interesting people that I thought to myself, this guy would be an absolute wonderful Freemason. He would benefit from the rituals and the teachings. And I have suggested it before, very softly, but a lot of people just have no idea. And when I mention it, they say, oh yeah, well, tell me about it. And then I tell them, and you'd be surprised. A lot of guys that have come to my lectures that were curious. That's why whenever I do a lecture, I always open it up to the public, because there may be, guys out there that are curious and want to know more about Freemasonry and talk to me, ask me. I'll tell you anything you want to know.
I think this is I always thought it was so restrictive, but it's really like wide open.
Eastern Star Group is restrictive about membership. I think that's where the confusion comes in, because I know people do know about Eastern Star, and I can tell you about that because that is restrictive.
Well, I just meant like I think people look at Masons like everything's restricted in like your belief system, but it's really open. It's more like whatever you believe is acceptable.
Not at all. Not at all.
What they think is that there's some big, humongous secret, and that the Masons run the entire world, and that they're trying to take over the world. As I tell people, we're only trying to take over the world one pancake at a time.
Yeah, one pancake breakfast at a time. No, that's not true. Now, though, but I will say that, you need to fill out a petition. You will be interviewed. They will do a background check. If you've been convicted of a felony, you can't become a Freemason. So there's a certain guy running for president right now that I know is not a Freemason.
No.
So, but anyway, it's kind of weird because when I look at our government today and I look at the people and I follow our American politics very closely, it's really sad because at the time that our country was founded, as I said, 53 of the 56 signers were Master Masons. And there are only two political figures whose names you've heard that are Freemasons that I know of now, and only two. Do you know who they are? One's a Democrat, one's a Republican.
Really?
Yep.
God, there's so many. I have no idea.
On the Republican side, Mitt Romney is a brother.
Yep, that makes sense. That tracks.
And Chuck Schumer.
Ah,
really?
yes, that makes sense too.
Okay, it actually does make sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I always wondered if Obama was, because the way he spoke reminded me of some of the older Masons that are out there. He was very eloquent and very professional. And then when he was just leaving office, do you remember this, Scott? His wife went like this during photos.
I'm just pulling up that photo right now. He actually, Michelle flashed the sign. And
yeah.
Do you remember I told you about
he's doing the M sign. That's the symbol for Mary Magdalene.
That's the symbol that we use, a sign of recognition in a certain non-Masonic tradition. And you might know who this guy is.
I can just barely see who it is.
Buzz Aldrin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And there's another one here that's good. You'll like. I think you know who this guy is. He's a brother too in this tradition.
Oh.
Okay. Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
Freddie Mercury.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Shaquille O'Neal also.
Are you allowed? You're allowed to say who's part of the Brotherhood?
Yes, I can. I can now do it. I couldn't before, but I can now.
Okay.
Here's another one that you might know.
Oh, shoot. Andy Warhol.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. Anyway, you want to see another cool picture of a rock? I don't know, CJ, if you've seen this before, but what do you guys see here?
I think.
Oh,
like the Rolling
Stones. That's a feminine
diagram.
symbol. Mm-hmm.
Start me up. That's your clue.
Oh, yep.
That's not cool.
That's cool.
It looks very feminine to me if you flip it upside down.
Yeah, well, okay. Anyway, I'm not going there. Any case, I don't know where we were, but here we are. So.
Yeah, we just kind of go with the flow on this show. Do you think people get the Freemasons confused with the Illuminati?
Yes, and the Illuminati, the official Illuminati, was a non-Masonic tradition that started in the late 1600s and existed for about 20 years, and then it disbanded. So, and they were some pretty famous European elites that were involved in that organization, but called the Illuminati, but it no longer exists. Now, there very likely is an organization that does exist now that is called the Illuminati, but it's not the same thing. And, as CJ said before, people think that Freemasons are running the world. And unfortunately, I've been through every Masonic body just about that exists, and I never got the memo. So either that or I'm not worthy. But so that's completely false. But having said that, there are the Bilderberger Group and other elite organizations of high-powered people that are making big decisions that affect the world. And I would not at all be surprised if some of the members of those organizations were Freemasons, but it's not a Masonic body by any means. It's like some of them may be Christians, some may be Buddhists. They just happen to be a particular faith. Some may be Freemasons. I don't know who they are, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of them were.
Is Freemasonry considered a secret society?
We don't call it a secret society. We call it a society with secrets. So, and frankly, if you want to learn those secrets, just go on the internet and you can find whatever you want. But within the craft, we recognize we're living in a different era. At the time of our founding fathers, secrecy was a matter of life and death, right? And you had to know who your friends were. You had to know who your enemies were. That's why they had signs of recognitions, certain hand gestures, handshakes, passwords. There's a whole series of things that you can do to identify a person's identity. And back then it was a matter of life and death. Today, it's not that way anymore. But the way we look at it is, look, if you want to go online and look up the secrets, you can go ahead and do that. But it kind of takes away the fun. It takes away some of the mystique. And, the other part of it is they just say to us that the only thing we don't want you saying is what the passwords are, the penal signs, and the handshakes. And look, if we can't trust you with simple, stupid stuff like that, how can we trust you with something more important? And it's true, right? So if you want to look it up, knock yourself out. I could have done that before I was a Mason, but I didn't want to ruin the fun. And I'm glad I didn't.
Spoilers.
And honestly, as he was saying, it does make you a better person. I joined Eastern Star, was it 8 years ago now? You introduced me to Dee Hennebury. Yeah. And I joined, and immediately, like, people started telling me, like, you're a different person. You really are. You're a different person. You've just become this better person. Yeah. And at work, they're like, you really are succeeding at things. And I'm like, I don't even realize it myself. But yeah, if you want to, if there's something that calls to you that tells you that there's something above yourself that's more important, and, you're not sitting at home going, me, 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 it's all about me. You join these organizations, and our organization, Eastern Star, does a lot of charity work.
Yeah.
And then
the ladies do a lot of great work. And
yep.
The one thing about becoming a Mason, becoming an Eastern Star, I mean, when you're traveling someplace and, I might meet somebody, and actually this has happened a lot lately. I went to the airport and I was actually wearing a Compass and Square t-shirt about a camping thing that I did for them. And I'm wearing this, and there was this big African-American guy that was checking me in at the airport at the Delta gate. And he said, "So are you a traveling man?" And he kind of turned around and grabbed my bag. And I said, "Yeah, I travel a lot to the East." And he just leaned over and he gave me the handshake, and we were automatically brothers, right? And we were already at this plane up here where everybody else in that airport is down here, because we have gone through the same degrees. We've taken the same obligations. And one of those obligations are, when you meet a brother, you guys know that he's got your back and I've got his back. And it's the same with Eastern Star. I've had women come up and say, yeah, they know that I'm a Mason, and they'll say something that it triggers. I go, oh, Eastern Star. And then we're automatically here, right? And so that brotherhood is real. It's genuine and it's sincere. And on that same trip, that same day, I got on my flight and I went to go back to the bathroom, and I still had my shirt on, right? And I come back, and this guy looks at me, goes, "Are you a traveling man?" And I didn't even answer. I just shook his hand, and we started talking, and it was, he was a brother. And so then I took my seat, and before we landed, he came up and he gave me his, in the York Rite, we go through what we call the Royal Arch. And one of the things that you you do in the Royal Arch is you create your own mason's mark, right?
Mhm.
And he had his etched into, actually it was stamped into a keystone. And it was something that he would give out as a gift to certain brothers. And he came up and he gave me one before we landed on the flight. He said, "Here you go, brother." And I said, "I'm sorry, I don't have anything for you." He said, "No problem. That's a gift for you." So
Wow.
cool little mementos like that. You know how it is, CJ.
Oh yeah, we have a line very close to that traveling to the east thing that we do as well that recognizes us as well. And typically you'll see them usually wearing something that is of significance of a star sister. And, I run across them all the time online too. We'll just be chatting away and they're like, "Yeah, my dad was a Mason and I joined Eastern Star." And I'm like, "Hi." Like you meet them and it's a different conversation too. It really is. You have friends that are outside of that. And sometimes you don't really meet equally like that with them and they don't really get it. And then you're around people from your lodge or you meet others along the way and it's a different conversation.
Yep.
There's a different understanding between the two who meet, because we have it feels like it's a different level of understanding with each other than someone who is not part of our group.
No, there's no question about it. Hey guys, I have an appointment at a little after 9, and I told them that I would definitely be available. But I have to say, I've had so much fun here. It's gone by like that,
right?
I know
we didn't even get the chance to ask you about your new book or that interesting.
Yeah, no, I'd love to, but yeah, I would encourage people to check out the new book, Oak Island, Knights Templar, and the Holy Grail, Secrets of the Underground Project. And I don't have a lot of time to talk about it right now, but I will tell you that some new documents have come forward to us that shocked the hell out of me. This happened in 2023, last year, and actually, some of these documents that intimated what happened on Oak Island we already had, but it was really sparse. There was no details, and it just sort of led us in a direction. But then this new stuff, oh my God, there's drawings, there's sketches of the underground works, of the mechanisms that were used, narratives. And these were all encrypted documents that we had to decode. And because I've been working with encrypted documents for a while and with other people that know how to decode them, breaking anagrams and these cryptograms is actually a lot of fun, but it can be very frustrating. But once you get it, the messages that are revealed are incredible. I mean, absolutely incredible. Now, I'm just going to say this for those that are interested and want to purchase the book. I'm going to warn you ahead of time. There's quite a bit of redacted material in the book, but it's not any of the important information. What it is details about the underground works. The reason that it's redacted is because I am not going to give the Curse of Oak Island show free content for them to make millions of dollars in advertising revenue without participating. I mean, why should I give it to them for free? And it's really not about the money. It's about the truth. And the truth of the matter is, yes, there was treasure on Oak Island. It was put there in 1395. 21 people died creating the underground works, the extensive underground works that the brothers are now digging in the remains of that have been basically filled in. But that treasure was recovered in 1769, and the bulk of the gold coins and silver coin was used to help fund the revolution. The rest of the artifacts, well, that's another story. So we'll save that for the next time. But the book is really good, but a lot of people have been upset and pissed off because we redacted the material. But look, get over it, okay? Yeah. I explain in the preface exactly why I did that. And I talk about some other things that are going on with the show that people that are fans are not going to like. But I'm sorry, it's the truth. And you know what I'm talking about, CJ?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do happen to remember a certain night where they sent us a faked hooked X.
Yeah. Don't even get me started.
Oh, I know. Once you get going about it.
No, I know. But I will say this. I've been invited on that show 4 times over the years, and I've respectfully declined each time.
Yep.
And people say, well, why didn't you go on the show? And I just said, because I care about my credibility. And that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, the very first time he finally let loose on that one, he went scorched earth on those people. It was a joy to behold, I'll tell you that much.
Well, let's save that for the next time.
Yeah. Thank you so much for
coming
coming
on. We haven't even gotten to the alien stuff yet, so let's
that's
got a lot to talk about.
Well, thank you very much, guys. I've had a lot of fun, and thanks to your audience. They had great questions, and yeah, let's do it again.
Heck yeah, we really appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, on to the next one.
Have a good night. Take care.
Night.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
That was awesome, CJ. Thank you
Bye.
so much for setting that up for us. We really
and I can tell you a little bit more about my side of things, as far as it goes for my connection to all of this. I met Scott years ago. He actually brought me into Eastern Star. Hi, Teresa. Yes. He brought me in. I refer to him as my uncle. He's really been someone that's close. I don't really have a male person in my life that is really that much of a positive influence on my life. So when Scott came along, I was so lucky. I really was. And, like he talked about, you can have your belief, your faith system, your whatever. You can have all of that, it doesn't matter. It's when you start, pushing it on people and forcing it on people. Well, we get such negative comments all the time about things, and you see people attack him over things that there's no reason for them to attack. And the way I grew up was, you don't attack people. You don't do that. Don't do that to people. That's nasty. That's mean. And they said, if you want to know about something, ask questions. And then I was doing my ancestry, and these red crosses started popping up in my family tree. And I went, what is this? So I started researching, and his name popped up. And I said, Scott, you want to fill in some blanks for me here? I don't know how this goes. And he said, yeah, your ancestor was the 4th Grand Master of the Knights Templar. It's said that they are part of the Christ bloodline, but don't start thinking you can walk on water, okay? So I started I started to ask a lot of questions. And he knew a lot more about this, not only because of his research, but because he's part of the Sinclair Templar line. And if you watch Da Vinci Code, you already know the story behind that one, except for the story they told in the movie wasn't true. But the Sinclair bloodline was one of the oldest Scottish Templar lines. And they were a pretty big deal. So when you see Templar stuff, you hear the name Sinclair. That was because his ancestor, Henry Earl, actually went over to Nova Scotia in the 1300s after they had left, after the put down in 1307. That's where we get the original Friday the 13th from. After the church put the Templar down, they departed for different areas of the world. They left France and they went to the US. They went to Portugal. They went to Canada. They went to England. I don't know if you saw the story, but there was a farmer that was farming his land, and he found what he thought was a rabbit hole. Well, it was a different type of rabbit hole. It wasn't an animal rabbit hole. It was a Knights Templar rabbit hole. And he dug underneath this hole, and there is an entire underground area that has been dated back to the time of the Templar and what they believe was one of their underground hideouts as they departed. There's also a huge area of Portugal where there are Templar castles. There's an entire street that has Templar crosses and has storefronts that their front store displays are the old medieval Templar outfits that they used to wear. And part of what brought me in after that was that I started looking into my ancestry, not just because of that and finding the Templar, but I got really sick when I was in my 20s. And I ended up having to be rushed into the hospital for an emergency operation. And after I got out of the hospital, I talked to my grandfather's brother and found out that this was actually a genetic line thing where the entire side of the family had this. And so I started researching more and going, okay, well, what else is in my bloodline that's going to kill me? And that's when I came across the story that he'll have to tell us more about because he knows the details. I don't know that my ancestors were involved in this, but Earl Henry Sinclair went to Nova Scotia and his group met up with the Mi'kmaq Indians. And that is why the Mi'kmaq flag is what it is. If you were to look up the Mi'kmaq flag that has the sun and the moon and the red cross on it, that is a Templar flag. It is because of the dualism, black and white, good and evil, male and female, yin yang, sun and moon, all of that. So they created that flag in honor of their meetup because then some of those Templar stayed behind and married into those Mi'kmaq families. Well, my grandfather's 8th great-grandmother was a Mi'kmaq woman, and they referred to her as the mother of the tribe. And so I went to go see him at one of his speaking events, and his wife at the time, they're now divorced, but his wife at the time, she was just getting to meet me for the first time, and she walked up to me and said, "What is your ancestry?" And I was like, oh boy, here we go. And he said, oh, she has both French Templar and Mi'kmaq ancestry in her line from what I had told him about. And she's just like, yep. I need to give you some books to read because you're going to need to know a little bit more about your heritage.
Oh man.
So it's been an interesting ride. And then I was at one of his speaking events where he was talking about the Templar. And he said, the sisters are here. And I was like, Eastern Star's here? Can you introduce me, please? And he's like, yes. And so after the event, there was a group of people there that were buying his books. And he walked me up to them and said, this is my niece. I would like you to bring her into Star. If she needs any paperwork signed, just leave it to me. And so he brought me into the organization about 8 years ago. And I've been a part of it ever since. So it's been a real fun ride getting involved with all of this and learning that I have quite the controversial and wild bloodline.
That is so cool.
But awesome. Eastern Star is basically, you learn about the females from the New Testament and what they did with their lives, the sacrifices that they made. There are 5 of them. The first one is a woman who they don't really know what her actual name was, but there's a story in the Bible of a woman who was the daughter of a man named Jephthah. And they were doing sacrifices at that time. And so they wanted a sacrifice. And she brought herself forward and said, I'll be that sacrifice. And her father said no. And on the day of the sacrifice, he went to lift the veil on the woman's face and found it was his daughter. And so she gave her life as a sacrifice. The second one is my ancestor, Ruth. Ruth was a woman who stayed with the woman that she worked with. And when after that woman's husband passed away, she said, well, I'm going to be leaving and going back to my home where I grew up. And she said, but you can stay here. And Ruth said, absolutely not. Where you go, I go. And she devoted her life to taking care of this woman. And later on, she was working in the fields and she met a man, and she had very little. They were basically creating bales of straw and, wheat and stuff like that to make bread. And a man approached and asked who she was. And it was explained to him who Ruth was. And later she married him. And if you look up the historical background of this, you will find that Ruth was married to a man named Boaz. Ruth and Boaz were the ancestors of Emperor Charlemagne.
Wow.
Yeah. So she was one of them. The other was was a queen who saved her people from extermination. And she was a child at the time, actually. She was a child bride and queen, and her husband was going to put down this whole group of people from their home. And she stood declaring her, she's the queen and she's not going to allow this to happen. And she was able to save all of them from being killed. The other one was Martha. And many people would say that she was the sister of Mary Magdalene. Don't know for sure if they were actual sisters or if it was that they were, because they were priestesses of the church at the time, that they just referred to each other as sisters. Hard to say, but you'd probably recognize Martha as the sister of the man who they say Jesus brought back to life, that he resurrected, that had been dead for 3 days.
Mary?
No, the man that he resurrected from the dead.
Oh.
Lazarus.
Yeah.
Lazarus, the man who was resurrected from the dead after 3 days. Though there are some questions about that story, whether or not he was actually dead or whether it's the way that Scott was telling you guys about initiation as a Mason.
Mm-hmm.
Because the old you is dead. The term to be raised from death is to be initiated as a Mason. But the Bible tells us that her brother died and that Jesus brought him back from the dead after 3 days. So Martha's story covers her grieving process of losing her brother.
So is that where the 3 days come from? That's interesting you said that, because you usually get 3 days bereavement.
Right. Right. So it was, he had been dead and then Jesus arrives and raises him from the dead. And so that one remains to be seen, that it was actually, he somehow had the magical ability to bring someone back to life once they were dead for 3 days. Or was it that he was in fact alive and that there was some form of Masonic raising as an initiation into the secrets that Jesus knew from the practices he learned from Egypt.
Right.
But we'll never know. But the last one is an amalgamation of different women. However, there are a lot of us who will tell you that the last one is Mary Magdalene, because the symbol for this last one, and they just call her the elect lady. And if you look this up on the internet, I'm just going to go ahead and say the symbol because you can look it up on the internet and see it anyway, because it's on all the jewelry, it's on all the imagery, it's on all the pictures. It's a cup. And what do we say the cup is again? The Holy Grail?
Yeah.
And the Holy Grail is the bloodline, and the elect lady, Jesus's wife, right?
Right.
So they won't admit to that, but that's the truth. And so we say that there are some of us that, not in public circles, will say that's Mary Magdalene. Exactly, Adrian.
Yep. Okay.
There's that practice. So when you are brought in, you're walked basically around what they call the labyrinth. And the definition for the labyrinth is basically our way of life. We don't walk a straight line. We walk a labyrinth because we can always fall off of it. Stuff happens. We never quite know exactly where things are always going to go. It's always, to some extent going to be a mystery to us as we walk through life, whether, something bad's going to happen, something good's going to happen. You could be alive one day to the next. You could go to work and lose your job. Things are crazy. And so we never walk a straight line. We're always walking a labyrinth of what's going to happen next. Yeah. So you walk around a circle, basically, they tell you about each of the ladies, and there's a whole initiation that occurs. But it's not anything related to Freemasonry itself. But before you can go through initiation, like Scott said, you do have to be brought into a room and you do have to be asked if you believe in a higher power. You don't have to have a name for it. You do not have to name a religion. You just simply say yes.
Gotcha.
But yes, we do a lot of charity work. Each year, our worthy matron and worthy patron pick a charity each, sometimes two. And then we have all kinds of different events and do fundraisers to raise money for it. The Mason brothers also have fundraisers that they do. Some are year round, some are just for a while. They also help with the cancer hospitals, the burn units. There's actually a form of infant blindness that I was told recently that because of the charitable work of the Freemasons, that was actually solved. There was actually a condition that was found. This was years ago. I don't know what the exact name of it was, but they were finding babies that were being born either blind or with vision issues that were really bad. And because the Masons put forward the money for the charity work that founded that went into finding answers, that was resolved. There are hospitals and burn units that I've been told that they're very close to solving certain childhood cancers. The burn units help with helping people who have, been in fires for one reason or another and have needed skin grafts to fix the problem. There was a brother actually broke down crying and told me about that he went and visited one of the hospitals and he got to speak to one of the kids that was there. And the kid was in a full body, what would you call it? Kind of like a cast type thing. Yeah. And he said, well, he asked him a lot of questions, what's going to happen once you're out of this cast? Does it bother you that you have to be in a full body cast? And the brother broke down crying, telling me that this little kid said, no, because once I get out of this full body cast, I'm going to be able to walk again.
Oh.
So there's a lot of really good work that they do, really fantastic stuff. And I mean, it's just, that's why it's become such a joke that they say, oh, Freemasonry, they're a secret society, they want to take over the world. Like, really sit down and have a conversation with one. I promise you're going to be meeting a lot of 70 and 80-year-old men who help make pancake breakfasts on Saturdays and will cry their eyes out to you telling you about the charity work that they do.
It's just a lot of ignorance. And, I'm glad you came on to talk about the different stuff that Freemasons do and help explain it to people.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love when people ask questions because I run Scott's Hooked X Facebook page and I cannot tell you how many times I have people that just attack us, that come in and say, how dare you be a Freemason? How dare you believe that Jesus was married and had kids? And you ask them straight up, like, well, what information do you have that would give a reason for that? Well, I just believe that. Oh, okay.
Yeah. We've got, we've got a lot more to talk about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's getting late. We are an hour ahead of you over here. And I know Rhonda's had a busy weekend. I've had a busy day.
We did a podcast before this one.
Yeah, we did a show before this one too. So we're going to have to cut this conversation a little bit short. We're going to have to have you and your uncle back on because we have a lot more to talk about with him.
And definitely, because there's so much more to go.
Yeah. Perspective on Freemasons, so that's awesome.
Yeah, actually, there was a group, and you guys would know about this, the Winchester Mystery House, right?
Yeah.
Do you know the real reason as to why that house was built the way it was built?
Because of the spirits telling her to keep building and building and building?
Nope, not at all.
Of course, it's not the true story.
Nope, not at all.
Story anyways.
There is no record of her ever having gone to anyone who gave her any form of reading whatsoever. He was a female Freemason. Her house was built to Masonic code. Why do you think that there's 13 of each room?
Oh, well, there you go.
There you go.
That gives us something to think about.
That could be a whole discussion on the show.
And I also believe she was Eastern Star as well, because there's some things that were mentioned about her and the way that she did things that really strikes me as things that Eastern Star women would do. So I have my theories. There's no real proof that she was, but because she was a woman and that group was probably just founded right around the time that she was alive, I believe that was when it was founded, was right around her time period. But there was a group in her area that did accept women as Freemasons, and they took the same Freemasonic degrees that the men take, and she was allowed to be one. So her house was built to Masonic code, 13 rooms of each. There's specific sacred geometry that Masons and Templars believe in. And so she used that to build the house. There's absolutely no proof that she ever saw anyone. She did have a cousin who claimed to be a medium, but there's no proof, no record that she ever talked to him about any of it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that ruins their tourism right there.
The people that run that place actually invented that ghost story so that they could draw people in.
Hey.
Yeah.
At least I talk about, if you know the truth of the story, print the story.
Right,
you know?
Yep.
right.
All right, CJ, thank you so much for coming on and joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we really have to book him again because he has so much more to tell us. He really needs to talk to us about the Cremona documents that are in the new book and how he got himself involved with UFOs and aliens.
Yes, we have a lot more to talk about with him.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to having you back. We'll talk to you soon.
Oh,
Thank
absolutely.
you so much. Have a good one.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So I've got to admit something. I was a little bit distracted towards the end. I found out one of my friends in the paranormal, Tasha Starr, passed away.
Oh no!
The other day, and I saw it in one of my the crop group chat. She was on a when I first started doing podcasts. I was on the URN radio network, and she had a show on there, and I've talked to her a few times. We weren't like super close, you know.
But you knew who she was.
I knew who she was, and I saw she passed away. I know she'd been dealing with stuff, personal stuff. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like took me by surprise. So definitely, guys, if you know someone, or if you have someone who's you've been dealing with stuff, and reach out to people. Make sure they know that you care.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. She could have died from natural causes. I really don't know, but it made me think about like just how someone can be here 1 minute and be gone the next.
I agree with that. I mean, don't just assume because somebody says they're okay. If you're feeling they're not acting like themselves, but they say, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm good. I'm fine. But you feel like they're not acting like themselves, follow up on that.
Like I said, I'm not trying to put into like any kind of like thing that something happened to her. Right. I don't know, but it made me think, just let people know that you appreciate them regardless. Because again, they could be sickness, car accident, whatever. Something could happen to them tomorrow, and you'll wish that you took the opportunity to say that. So Rhonda, I care about you.
I care about you too. You and Howie are some of my biggest supporters, and I've told people that recently. I'm like, Howie and Ryan are like my biggest cheerleaders. Always.
Well, I'm always here for you. You know that. Yeah. And I'm sorry about your cousin, Teresa. And I definitely didn't want to end this show on a sad note, but I just wanted to say to Tasha, we'll miss you. And again, say a prayer for her family and her friends who are left. Some of the people are really close to people who are left behind, and I hope she's found peace.
Yeah.
And we're praying for you and your family. It's it's really sad, but we will do our best to pray for them. And I know we're getting to the end, guys, and I realize again that this next 2 days, or next day, I guess 2 days, are going to be tough for you guys.
You have to wait 2 whole days.
I know.
Not even 40. It's not even 48 hours till you get the rain word of the week in your card.
we get the card. We get the new word of the week.
Yep.
So, guys, hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
It was awesome.
it was a lot of fun. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Lois. Thank you, Lisa, for coming on. Thank you, John. Thanks, CR, for running the chat for us. Really appreciate you. Hope you're feeling better. And yeah, next we've got Paranormal Security 9886 coming on the show on Tuesday. We're going to be reacting to a Nuke's Top 5 video. So those are always,
I love reactions. They're so fun.
a good time. It's going to be fun. So until then, we'll be back on here Tuesday night, same freaking awesome time.
Same freaking awesome podcast.
That's awesome. You keep pushing it up. It's like
you never know what I'm gonna say.
I'm waiting. Is it podcast? Is it place? Is it channel? We keep them guessing.
That's
Here in
right.
the Freaking Awesome Paranormal Show. So again, hug your friends, let them call your relatives, let them know that you appreciate them, and we will be back here Tuesday night. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.